Kurkukuna montamos kukurkani, pianchari kuyay kitali kurkani, anchaltam falta kuni.
Good morning. Happy Wootings Day to you. I hope this week is going along the way that you had planned and that you are gathering energy from all of that around you. Before we get started today, I want to say, as I always do, if you haven't had a chance to like, follow, or subscribe us on one of the many platforms, please, we ask that you do to help us distribute this message much more out there and further so that those who need to hear it can hear it. I also want to say huge shout out to New Reality TV. Newrealitytv.com is a collection of spiritual understandings and experiences that you can use to gain that piece of intellect that you may need to obtain or maintain your mental space. Super important to help guide and help us to reestablish that better mental health. As always, I also want to say if you've got a few extra coins, need somewhere to put them, by all means, please drop them in our tip jar. We're always in need of additional support to help us pass this mission out even further, to get it out there, to distribute it far and wide. For those of you who want to hear the audio podcast, by all means, you can check out our podcast every day, available on all the streaming platforms out there that you can get your podcast from. So check us out there. Finally, for those of you who would like to open a dialogue with me to help maybe get your mind around some things that are going on in your lives that you're struggling with, by all means, stop on my website, NorseWhispers.com. There you can find NorseWhispers.com/coaching, and we can start dialogue, and we can open up the discussion that'll hopefully help you find that piece that you're looking for. So check that out. Finally, I know I already said that, but finally, I also want to say, for those of you who have a question, we are live here on Facebook Live chat, so you can drop a comment in the chat box there, and we can certainly get a conversation started that way. Today we're talking about Wooten, and Wootens Day, of course, represents the chief of the Asir gods, Othin. Now, when he was being recognized by the Germanic tribes before they migrated north across the Elbe River, he was being recognized as Wotan. And Wotan, of course, a very warlike god, but he was a wise god. He was a smart God. When he had to wage war, he was very tactical. He was very he used all the things at his disposal, so that his peoples never suffered or didn't suffer as much as they would have otherwise. Now, as we know, Wotan would go on to rid the realms of the frost giants before migrating north across the Elbe River to become what we know as Othin. Now, Othin, by the time we see Snorlason and some of the other authors beginning to coin the term Othin, we're finding him as more of a benevolent king. Now, there is a history of him being warlike. Obviously, him and his brothers slew the giant Ymir, that helped them to form the realms, including, probably most famously, was to form Midgard, with his different parts serving as parts of this world. So we know that Othin had a history of war, being very warlike, but he was very wise by the time we see him written in the certainly in the sagas and the stories of him being recognized as Othin. So Othin and Wotan are the same person. simply a language differences and certain different aspects of his personality. Obviously, we find that again, Wotan, very warlike, very establishing, a tribe, establishing a clan, fighting all the good fights, whatever. But then by the time we see him migrate north and become Othin, we find him as more of a wisdom gatherer. He was a very wise chieftain of the Asir tribe. Now, in his role as Othin, we find that he was referred to in many different ways. The traveler, he was the All-Father. He constantly, we see him appearing throughout the realms in search of wisdom. Now, what is wisdom? Of course, we've talked about it before. Wisdom, of course, is experience and knowledge hooked together. So his objective then was to experience things as these many forms that he would take to visit the realm. And he would go and he would search throughout the realm for this wisdom, the experiences. My favorite story, of course, comes from my grandparents, where he would trade his physical eye for a drink from the well. Now, this goes back to our understanding that we're all connected to the great tree Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil, of course, being the center tree of the universe, and all realms were supported within its branches. And we know that each living form, anything that's alive, has kind of this center post of energy absorption that it has, starting at our crown, working all the way down to the root chakras. But this center energy, of course, is the stem of every living thing. The stem then connects to Yggdrasil, and this is the interchange between us as an individual and the universe as all the realms. Is these experiences that we have are stored in our memories, are addressable by our spiritual self, which then passes it through this connection to Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil then transports this all the way down through its many branches, down through the trunk, into these wells that were along the bottom, obviously at the roots, that Yggdrasil would drink from. Now, when Yggdrasil would drink from these wells, it would also cast a reflection of all these experiences within the water of the well. When Othin, or Wotan, would go and trade his eye that he may drink from the well, we see that all of these experiences of all the entities throughout the realms are now being ingested by Othin. Now, Othin would go ahead and take 9 days and 9 nights following this drink, that he would have, his brain would have time to process it all. This is where we're tying an experience to knowledge that I already have, right? So we're tying it together. Now, in this case, we find that many times when we approach things in our lives, whether they be challenges, obstacles, or just a learning opportunity, we approach it from one perspective. That's just the natural way of being for our brain. We're addressing it this way. And then we step back and we change our perspective. We, look at it from a different angle, and we begin to learn its breadth, right? So the example that my great-grandfathers have given me is that we see a puddle on the ground, and when we see the puddle, we're seeing the puddle from one perspective. But as we begin to step around the puddle and walk around its shores, we begin to see it from different perspectives. And now we're gaining a better understanding of that puddle. So we work our way all the way around the puddle. We can see the breadth of the puddle. We can see where it goes and what it does and its depth, and we can see all the things about this puddle. And our true life's experience is when we turn to the person next to us and we ask them and we inquire and we say, hey, what do you see in the puddle? And we begin that dialogue. Now we're gaining even more and more and more perspectives of this object. The object itself, in this case the puddle, never changes. Never changes. We simply begin to look at it from a different perspective. And this is how we approach, or we should approach, many things, most things in our lives. We should never look at it from just one very limited view and expect to know all about it. That's not how it's going to happen. We're going to have to broaden our perspectives to see it from different angles to be able to fully understand it. And Othin recognized this, which is why when he was processing these over these 9 days and 9 nights, he would process all of these experiences. And what all these experiences did is they took each of the knowledge stacks that Othin had built in his mind, and it made additional perspectives to it. Different relationships now existed within his mind. That's what the experiences did for him. What do these experiences do for you? Well, as an example, when I think of our morning commute to work or school or wherever you're going, when we travel only in one direction, the same direction every day, all the time, we never change, right? This is the way. We know how long it takes. We know every piece about it, because each day that you travel that journey, you actually note something different about the journey, right? You see something different. There's maybe somebody new riding a bicycle. Maybe there's a new building going up. Maybe there's different cars on the road with you. So you're seeing a very different picture each time. And so one day you may get all the green lights, right? And then the next day you don't. You get all red lights. It's like, right? And so we see this journey, this commute, differently each time. We're gaining our perspectives. Now, one of the things when we talk about time, our commute to work is, hey, what takes the least amount of time? So we're going to try different. What do? We're going to try different avenues, right? We're going to try going different directions and seeing which one's faster. This is really the idea of gaining a perspective. Now we're gaining a larger understanding of this distance between our home and our work or school, whatever. So this is really about our lives, looking at all the challenges and the obstacles that we have in our lives. And there are many. There are many people who just find drama. And if they can't find it, they manifest it sometimes, right? And so these people, but when we experience them, we need to take a minute to change our perspective, because many times we get frustrated or we get anxious or whatever when we're looking at it from this angle. But when we step back and kind of turn a little bit, notice how the stress kind of, oh, I see what they're doing, right? I see what they're talking about, whatever. When we change our perspectives, we're allowing ourselves to kind of broaden our view of this challenge. A great analogy here is where, if you think about us on a mountain path and we're moving up this mountain path and we come to a place where there's a boulder right in the middle of the path. I'm like, oh man, from where we're looking on our mountain path, there's no way around it, right? But there is, my friend. If we were to step a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right, we would see the path beyond this boulder, right? We'd be able to see it. Or we could go over the boulder, right? Many times it's just a matter of changing our perspective of this obstacle or challenge before us, right? Or maybe this emotional energy that's just overwhelming our pipe. Remember, for those of you who are new to the show, we know that the brain is capable of a certain amount of bandwidth. It has a certain amount of throughput that you can put, particularly emotional processing through, right? And that pipe is finite. And when we have these separation pieces, when we're living, not living authentically, when we're not living congruently, we find a layer of silt along the bottom. And then normally we maintain a little headspace at the top. And that headspace allows us to kind of think our way through any trauma that happens to fill the pipe. And if, for whatever reason, the pipe were to be overrun, obviously something very traumatic were to happen in our lives, many times it can overflow this pipe into the rest of the brain, which then could provide us with a physiological symptoms, tremors, nervous tics, many anxiety attacks for sure. And remember, this trauma that we're experiencing through our processing can be real or imagined. It doesn't have to always be something out there. It can be imagined. The brain doesn't know a difference between imagination and real experiences. Okay, doesn't know. This is why, in many cases, the haunted house that we go to each Halloween, these have an effect on people, right? Not as much that it's, the jump scares that happen, obviously, as one of the tools of the trade, the jump scares, but it's our imagination that's doing more, that's multiplying the anxiety, the nervousness about what could happen, particularly when we're dealing with dark energy or the unilluminated unknown. So we see we've got some high processing that's got to fit into this tube. And if, in many cases, if we have this silt caused by living inauthentically, the silt is going to force the trauma up into that headspace, which is where we experience traumas and we just can't think our way through it, or it's blind rage, blind sadness, all of these different symptoms or identifications are caused when we use up that cognitive space that we need at the top of our throughput, right? A cognitive space allows us to take these traumas and now break them down into manageable parts, right? We can deal with these manageable parts. Yes, they may be painful. Yes, they may be sad. They may be, they may incite anger, love, whatever. But by themselves, we can handle them. We can cognitively just work them to fruition or to completion. So this is really the idea of managing this energy, and these are some of the lessons that Wothin would go through during his 9 days and 9 nights, is that he would process these, gain the perspectives, and then understand how those perspectives interacted with one another to give us a broader view of all of the different knowledge stacks that he had in his mind. Now, this is really where we see with age comes wisdom. Not technically because anything magic happens as we age, but simply because we've had the experiences that allows us to build these relationships from our knowledge stacks. And so we're building out this web of related knowledge, giving us a broader perspective and seeing the puddle from a much more encompassing view, right? And so that's really what Othin sought, and that's really in the quest of everyday life. This is what we should be looking for as experiences. Many people say, I could have lived just fine without all the hurt I had in my previous life. Well, no, technically you couldn't, because you wouldn't be here to say I didn't need that. You wouldn't be here if you weren't there. So each trajectory, remember, our trajectory through life, our path, our forward momentum, always starts at the point you are. So here, I can't get to here until I'm here, right? I can't come this way, and I got to be here to be here. So each step along the way, each step along the trajectory is the foundation for the next step. Therefore, in much the same way, we know that our brain processes the past to see the future. Okay? So we learn the lesson from the past, and that dictates how we're going to act in the future, what we're going to absorb, what we're going to seek. So our past is now dictating our future. Does that make sense? Many people say that when we talk about spirituality, it sounds like quantum science. It sounds like quantum physics. And quantum physics is a real good fit to explain many of the underlying fundamental pieces of spirituality. We can use, for those of us, myself included, who needs the technical. I need to know how it works. Don't just tell me to have faith. Faith is for people who are willing to follow blindly, and I'm not willing to do that. I need to know what the steps are, what the pieces are. Okay? Quantum science now is proving much of what we already knew of spirituality. And this is one of those things. For us to be here, we have to start here. And so this trajectory that you're on in your life, the experiences that you've had in the past, is what's going to drive where you are in the future. Okay? Now, you say, oh, well, what about the present? Well, the present, we know, or I should say I do, based on conversations with my ancestors, is that the present is a micro sliver of time that exists between the experiences that we have had and the ones we haven't. Now, experiences are micro things. Experiences don't have to be an emotional earthquake. They just don't. They can be every little vision, take your everyday view of things into snapshots, into individual snapshots. Now, take the audio that goes with that video, right? Connect them together, and now we have one snapshot with one sound, right? And we may have one smell, and we may have one taste, and we may have one touch, and all of those in this snapshot in time is a present. Our whole consciousness exists within the present. We're aware of the past because we're aware of experiences that we have. That's what memories are. All right? So we're aware of those, and we're going to use those memories to see, hopefully, make a good decision about moving forward. That's the key here, is that we're going to use the past to make a decision about what we're going to do in the future. But our whole present our whole consciousness exists within the present. So super critical to understand our journey in life when we talk about mental health, talking about trying to apply some balance to our mind so that we can function every day in a happy, comfortable, harmonious way. Now, when I say happy, comfortable, harmonious, joyful, content, this is the natural state of living forms. Dogs are content, absolutely irrelevant of what's going on. If they're being shown love, if they're being shown attention, if they're living their lives, they're content. Okay? This is the natural state of living things. Plant. Our brothers and sisters within the plant world are the same way. They are content with their lives, with what they're experiencing in their lives. So this is a natural state for us. And so we need to wash away all those things that would remove that from our existence and seek those things. Harmonious, peaceful, content, comfortable, joyful, wonderful life. That is what we are designed to do, to have, to be. So anything that's pulling us outside of that is causing, believe it or not, some level of stress within the mind, either in the physical mind or the spiritual mind. And it's causing that separation, ergo that silt that's sitting at the bottom of our trauma tube. I don't know that that's what I want to call it, but that's certainly our processing bandwidth, right? So our goal is to keep that tube as clean as possible, clear away the silt, make sure we've got as much time as much space as we can get, and therefore maintain some level of cognitive headspace up along the top. So that's our objective. Hopefully you can do that, and look forward to just trying to figure that out and how that's going to play into your life. All right, my friends. Today, Wootens Day, I wish you the very best Wootens Day. I hope that you have all the experiences that you want and you need to help you find your harmony and your peace, certainly up here. We will see you tonight, where we will answer a question from one of you. If you haven't had a question answered, by all means, hit up my website, NorseWhispers.com. There, you can scroll all the way to the bottom, look to the left, and you'll see a big orange button. It says Ask Me Questions. By all means, click that button and ask your question. If I make a show about your question, the answer to your question, I will send you a free t-shirt. So check that out. Be sure to join us live, as we'll go live tonight at 6:30 p.m. Alaska time. So we will see you there. If I don't see you there, I will see you tomorrow morning when we celebrate and embrace the Norse god Thor and his strength. So we'll see you then. All right. Love and light, my friends, and we will see you later.